I think we can all agree that one of the biggest arguments in the audio industry is that plugins and hardware are not equal. It's a pretty big discussion to have because I run a studio that's filled with hardware, but I also work for a software company. So what side of the fence am I really on? We're going to be getting into some brutal details. By the end of this video, you'll understand. We need to stop lying to ourselves because plugins will never be the same as hardware. So what's happening, fam? Miami here with JST, and every day I wonder why people have such an obsession with gear that they've never had the opportunity of using. They think you can't make a solid song unless you have the most expensive gear. And this has to logically boil down to two things. Either it's because you always want what's out of reach, or because their favorite mixers used a certain piece of analog hardware to achieve something. I mean, obviously that piece of gear is the only way that you could achieve something, right? It only makes sense. And there was a period of time when it was quite obvious that plugins were playing catch up. But the first way they're different, how they sound. Actually, no, I'm gonna save that until the end. The first reason plugins will never be equal to hardware is price. So I have to assume that everyone watching is a musician, mixer, or a songwriter. Some bedroom producers, all the way to people that run studios kind of like this one. So the most practical use of a plugin or hardware is at your home setup, unless you're a touring musician. So let's take an iconic piece of hardware like the Blue Stripe 1176. This is the hairball modded to OG specs, which hovers around $1,000, and we'll compare that to one of the plugin emulations you can grab for around 30 bucks from multiple companies. But you know what doesn't cost you a dime? Pushing that subscribe button, notification bell, and like button if you're enjoying the video. Transition game still crazy. Back to the comparison. At JST, we focus more on problem-solving tools than one-to-one emulations, so I'll use the Waves one and compare. So these are a bit different in solo, but the question then becomes, they sound the same in a mix, would you still have gear acquisition syndrome and want to purchase it? Because a lot of people would say yes, because they like to physically be able to hold something in their hands, right? But by this logic, what if it's not an emulation plugin? I can't hold Soothe in my hands. I can't hold and never will hold gain reduction in my hands. Yet, there are those that would spend $970 extra to have a hardware equivalent. But Miami, if that's true, why do you have it? My friends, I have an answer for you. I rent my studio out, and in the rock world, when renting out, you kinda need to have some sort of blue stripe. So yeah, back to the main point, plugins will most likely never reach the price of their counterparts. But you know what should come with price? Number two, reliability. This might be the biggest reason that plugins aren't the same as hardware. When a piece of analog gear breaks, you aren't gonna be able to use it for a while, and the cost of repairs can be hefty. But hey, at least you spent your money on something you can hold, right? And one thing that people don't bring up is that it's very easy for a hardware company to make products that have faulty designs. Components overheating because it's not vented properly or too close to something else. But somehow this becomes the customer's problem. This is why it's important to buy hardware and software from reputable companies. A hardware company with a good track record will make products that last for a long time and will be more lenient when you're having issues if it's their fault. But I'm not saying software doesn't have issues too. It's just handled differently. If you have an issue with your plugin or a bug, you report it to the company and they fix it for you at no cost. And if there's some huge issue that prevents you from working or using the plugin, it can be fixed over the air through updates. No one's going to redesign a piece of hardware, tell you to mail your old unit back in on their dime, and then repair it on the house. Just not practical. Number three, recall. This is definitely a place where hopefully plugins never become like hardware. One of the instances in which the digital world remains supreme is being able to save sessions in presets. If you do a mix that's completely analog, and I've done this many a time, the change of a single knob can ruin your entire mix if you're trying to do a revision down the line. I think I can recall a lot of things I've asked you all to do. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff, but I don't want you to think this is a video bashing on hardware. I love hardware. I just always see these videos talking about how to make plugins work more like hardware. But how about the reverse? Here's a tip if you're using hardware to make it work more like a plugin. There's this dope thing I heard about a while back called Session Recall. And inside of Session Recall, you can recreate the hardware chain with plugin GUIs and parameters so that you can keep all your settings right in front of you after a session, just like a plugin. I thought this was pretty amazing, and it's probably the closest thing you're gonna get to being able to save your settings. This leads me to my next point, number 4. time management. There is nothing more rewarding than spending your valuable time using a patch bay to create the proper signal path for your analog hardware. And on the plus side, these patch cables are pretty friendly looking, right? Just like a rainbow. And of course, you gotta let all your tube gear warm up, but at least you know you'll be getting analog warmth that you crave. If you were using plugins on your session, you could just drag and drop them onto your tracks and start working. But who in their right mind would want to do that when you could spend your valuable time connecting preamps, EQs, and compressors to the 16 mic drum setup that you have? And let's hope you didn't mess up a cable, because if you get confused by the routing in your DAW, you're gonna have no idea how much worse it can be dealing with a patch bay. Number 5, consistency. One of the ways hardware is amazing is that it's always a surprise. Imagine buying 2 of the same compressor, but due to tolerances of the components, they sound different. That sounds like a lot of fun, right? I actually have 2 preamps that sound pretty different. Like, different enough that I use them on separate sources because I think one is a bit more mid-forward than the other. With software, your plugin sounds the same every time. If you open it in a different studio or send someone a session with settings on, it's always going to be exactly what you intended. But this is where I want to bring up the sound of these emulations. If 2 pieces of analog gear sound different, then why would you expect a plugin to sound identical to a piece of hardware? Pay much more attention to the overall characteristics and feel, because that's what matters. There are plugins that I think sound better than hardware. Show me a hardware equivalent compressor that works better than gain reduction on screams. I'll wait. So let's go over these all again one more time. Price, reliability, recall, consistency, and time management. Both hardware and software have a place in my heart, but they are literally different, and that's not a good or bad thing. Being different just means that they're unique in their own way. There's enough space in this beautiful world of audio for everyone to fit in. If you're an engineer on the come up, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, you only have to do it one time. And tap that bell for notifications so when a video drops, you know the location. Until next time, I am out of here. Mic drop. Except as engineers we know, I'd never really drop this thing because Rode got pretty upset the last time I did. Later.